everyone, welcome back to the Zach GP channel, and in today's episode we have another post-sprint quali F1 Fantasy Final Thoughts video. Well, if you couldn't guess from the title what I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to be going through all of the new data that we have after sprint quali to finalise our teams for the deadlines for the sprint race tomorrow. Now, as per usual, to my left, you will see all of the points needed for each asset to go up or down in budget. However, I will say this weekend, it's not as important as it has been in last races. As we're getting to the end of the season, we're pushing a lot for points now. I say to an extent, you'll understand very soon. But anyway, with that all said and done, let's head straight into Zach's do's and don'ts list. And it's more of a ranking list these days now. So let's get into it. And remember, if I do not mention a name, that means you do not bring them into your team. So let's start off with the A tier drivers first. And for me, we need to talk about my favourite driver to bring in for everyone. It has to be Lando Norris. In practice, he just about pipped Oscar Piastri, and then in the sprint quali, he looked absolutely phenomenal. Second run on those softs went even quicker than his first run. Lando Norris looks like he's in tip-top form. And especially with the rain seemingly cooling off on the Sunday a little bit more, we'll have to keep an eye on that. Just make sure we have a look before the deadlines. I'm very comfortable with going Lando Norris in my team. I think everyone has to have him as the base, as your 2 times. Very much looking forward. Then heading into the next driver you could use is Oscar Piastri. To put it simply, the McLarens looked absolutely rapid. Even though Oscar Piastri is only third for the sprint race, I really do think on race pace, he'll be able to get past Antonelli. Antonelli, I think, has been doing really good so far, but race pace, I just don't see how he'll be able to keep ahead of him unless Norris keeps the pack there, which, to be fair, he might, obviously being his championship rival. But anyway, I think third place is enough for Piastri to be the easy second place choice option. Easy enough if you can get Norris and Piastri, and it looks like the way to go this weekend. Then heading into the differential options, and it's got to be George Russell and Max Verstappen. Now, I'll talk about George Russell first because he's the serious contender. He's cheaper than both the McLarens. They've looked on the ball here, and he's more consistent than Antonelli. We've seen so many times in sprint race weekends where we can get a little bit of ahead of ourselves from the sprint quali results, and then on the actual qualifying, it goes a little bit more back to the norm. So that's why I'm still leaning a bit more to Russell over Antonelli. However, they're both good options. And then Max Verstappen, of course, if you do believe it's going to rain, you can never doubt Max. So I would say Max is still in contention if you think it's going to rain on the Sunday. But from what I last looked at, it didn't seem 100% sure. And with where McLaren's look right now, I just can't look away from them. Then heading into the A tier constructors, and I can tell you for the first time in quite a while in F1 Fantasy, I can tell you with full 100% accuracy who your top 2 A tier constructors should be without a doubt. It's not even a competition. It has to be McLaren and Mercedes. Look at the sprint quali results. All 4 of them in the top 4. It's a no-brainer this weekend, and it also sets you up quite nicely for Vegas, which could potentially be more of a Mercedes track as well. For me, that's all you need to know about the A tier constructors. Just bring in McLaren and Mercedes into your teams. Then heading into the B tier drivers list, and as you can see, it is a big list, and this is why I wanted to mention the budgeting slightly earlier on, because for me, I do agree. It's time we just look at the points, and you'll see third place in my rankings is exactly why, because Alonso's going to be going down minus 0.6 no matter what this weekend, unless he has an Ollie Bearman type weekend from Mexico. That situation, it's okay to keep Alonso and want to bring him in, but I still think, purely because if I could do it, if I had the funds, I still would go Bearman and Bortoletto. Purely for Bortoletto, the top dog, because I still see a driver of the day potential if he has a good race, and they're just both very easy assets to hold on to, especially, again, we don't know fully if it's going to rain on the Sunday, which is the main bit where we don't want them taking a minus 20, and if it doesn't, or even if it's just slight rain, I think they'll be fine. But yeah, it all comes down to, you don't really want to focus on budget too much anymore with it being so little races left. But if you can afford to have Bortoletto or Bearman in your team with the likes of Alonso or someone else, I don't see a reason why you wouldn't go towards them. I don't think the points between all of the B tier drivers is ever big enough unless we get a crazy result like Bearman. And then as we go down my rankings list, you'll see Kimi Antonelli all the way up in 4th place. Realistically, it's just because he's an awkward asset to have, because you could go with someone like a Norris, Russell, Antonelli and try to figure out your team there. But for most people, it's just it's an awkward place how much he costs in F1 Fantasy, so that's why he's a little bit lower in the list. And then you've got the likes of Gasly and Colapinto. They're both doing pretty decent on the list, holding assets. They won't go down much even if they do crash out of the race. And Stroll as well. Keep an eye on Stroll. With Aston Martin's pace, it looks really good, especially if we do get a little bit of rain. We know what Stroll can do. But for all of those B-tier drivers, those are my favourites. The rest of them, I would say, be a little bit cautious of if you're trying to bring them in. Then finally, for my rankings, after Sprint Quali, we go over to the B-tier constructors. Now, would I actually bring any of the B-tier constructors in? Only one name comes to mind, and it probably would be Aston Martin if you're going for a differential route with potentially McLaren Aston, if you wanted to bring in a Norris Piastri build and you couldn't afford it for there. However, the rest of them, I just don't see the point in it happening. Haas, Racing Bull Sauber, Alpine, none of them had standout performances that made me excited. So I just think if you're going for a differential option, it's Aston Martin, but be aware because they could go down in budget, but also you're going to be a little bit worried for Vegas heading forward, which is why I think if you can afford to have two 8-tier drivers of Norris Piastri or Norris Russell with McLaren and Mercedes, it still wouldn't be worthwhile going to McLaren Aston, because I just don't think there's enough of a difference, and it could really skew your team for Vegas as well. So now with that all said and done, let's head over to the chips that you can use this weekend. And straight away, I have another rankings list for you right now. Now, the reason I've done this for the chips is because everyone is at different stages of which chips they have, and this is perfect for anyone out there, because let's say you have autopilot and no negative, then I would recommend using no negative, especially with it a little weary of what could happen, even if it's just qualifying in the rain. Brazil, even without rain, normally there's a few crashes, so it's always worthwhile using a no negative here. But for someone who has both no negative and autopilot, I'd recommend no negative. But then if you've only got autopilot, I'd recommend autopilot, etc, etc. You get the gist of it. However, I would say if you've only got one 8-tier driver in your autopilot play, I wouldn't recommend using it, and I'd save it for a Qatar or whenever else you could use it. But then you have Limitless, Final Fix, Extra DRS, and Wildcard. At the end of the day, I think the top two are my favourites heading into this weekend, and then if you really need to get rid of Limitless, I'd recommend doing that as well. And don't fret, because if you are using Limitless, I'll show you my Limitless team at the end of the video. So with that all said and done, let's now head over to the best bit of the video, the team selections. Now, into the team selections, it is a wonderful sprint race weekend to predict for team selections because it's such an easy week to be picking our teams, and I'll go through exactly what sort of teams everyone can make. But heading into the first team you could use, I know, you're seeing the team value right there and you're going, whoa, hold your horses. Don't worry, this is for the top teams, and just like every team I show on my post-sprint quali or post-FP2 videos, we'll do the trickle-down version of each of these teams until we reach a team value that you can afford. But right now, if you have 140.6 million, this is where I'd go. It's triple McLaren with Norris Piastri. Very clearly looks like Norris is the 2 times. With Piastri, his second gunner, it looks pretty half decent between them. Just hopefully they don't crash. Touch wood. I said touch wood, don't worry. With Behrman, Bortoletto, Alonso. And of course, McLaren Mercedes. I really don't think I need to mention much about McLaren and Mercedes just because it is such a lock-on for those constructors being the ones we pick. However, like I mentioned in the B-tier driver section, it's a mix of budgeting and also just getting those points in and out. So Alonso looks brilliant for points, but he is going to go down in budget, most likely minus 0.6. He needs like 40 odd points to not have that happen. It's going to happen. But then Behrman and Bortoletto, they counteract that, and also they don't look terrible on points. It's hard to tell on the sprint quali exactly where a lot of the B-tier drivers, unlike the likes of Sainz, Ocon, Alonso, if they're going to do half decent, because 2 of them are at the back, 1's right at the front. But I'm happy to stick with Behrman and Bortoletto. However, if you can't afford this, all you have to do is just move around the B-tier drivers. And you can do this, bear in mind, with every single team selection I'm about to show you, because it is just as simple as that. First off, all you want to do is drop Alonso to Pierre Gasly. Then, if you need to get rid of Behrman, all you have to do is Behrman down again to Alonso, and then Alonso to Colapinto. And then you do the exact same thing with Bortoletto. If you need to get a little bit more money in, Bortoletto down to Alonso, and then you just keep it at this. And this is a team that a lot of people can afford, and even I can afford it because it's less than 135 million to bring in. And finally, with this foundation of a team, if you still can't afford it, then I would drop Piastri down to George Russell. And that is the final level of this main 2 8-tier drivers and 2 8-tier constructors team. However, there is a very similar situation what could happen if you drop to one A tier premium driver. So it's a very similar starting point, like I've been showing, from the first team possible. Just now you go to Antonelli, and this is for anyone who's in that weird middle ground of not exactly at 130 million, can't really get into A tier drivers unless you have a worse constructor. So I'm happy to go for a 4A light team if it consists of Antonelli this weekend. And it's just as easy as I showed before to get rid of any person that you need to get rid of B tier wise to bring in the teams. All you'd have to go is Alonso down to someone like Pierre Gasly, then Behrman all the way down to Fernando Alonso, then down to Colapinto, and then if you still need more money, Bortoleto down to Alonso. And again, if you're still struggling on budget, if you've just started the game and you're really trying to get in these half decent teams and you're at around that 110-ish million range, then that's when you would drop Mercedes down to Aston Martin, but only then for me. And those are the two main foundation teams I would recommend bringing in this weekend. However, we do have a differential team. Welcome to your differential team, everyone. It's as simple as I've just shown for every other team with the B tier drivers. Again, Alonso down to a Gasly, follow that exact route, but this time round you get the triple McLaren that we are after. This is if you don't believe in Antonelli's race pace or just a little bit worried about him in a potential weekend where there's a bit of rain, then you could go with just having Oscar Piastri there. But, of course, that means having Aston Martin as a constructor. But for where they've been right now, it's not a bad differential. And it's definitely one that puts you up on the radar if you can't afford the triple McLaren with Mercedes. However, for me personally, I still think it'd be better to run Norris Russell or Norris Piastri if you could keep Mercedes, just because it looks better in the long run. And I still think those teams will score more points. But if you want to go for this team, it is here waiting for you. And then finally, we have a limitless team. So for everyone out there who is planning on using limitless, it's as simple as this. Again, Norris 2 times, he's looked on form at the minute. McLaren, Mercedes as constructors, we don't need to have any questions about that. With Piastri, Verstappen still looked good. It's just the car looks a little bit temperamental at the minute with double Mercedes as well. So this is my limitless team. If you're looking for that, this is exactly what you need. But everyone, that is it for this post-sprint quali F1 fantasy video. Thank you all so much for watching this video. As per usual, if you need any help with your team selections heading into the deadline for sprint race, then I will be in the comments down below for any questions you need possible. Comment down below and I will help you out. Bear in mind, again, it's a similar case where I'll probably be asleep when this goes uploaded, so bear with me for the first few hours and then I'll wake up and then deal with it all there. But also, if you want a little bit more help that's not in the comments, make sure to join me on my live stream over on FanAmp, where we'll be live an hour before the sprint race to go over all of your questions that need asking. But right now, I'm feeling very, very confident with everything, and I hope all of you are feeling confident heading into this race weekend as well. And remember, it's Brazil. It's a great weekend for racing. It's a great championship fight. Oh, and with F1 Fantasy as well, I am living life, and we're all living life. I love it. So thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all very soon. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care, everyone.